Hi there, and thank you so much for joining me again. It's only been a few weeks since the MPC Live 3 was announced, but it seems like Akai are not yet done with their rollout of new stuff for 2025. Today, they launch Iona, Iona, a new virtual instrument that is a faithful recreation of the iconic Roland SH101 monophonic synthesizer, with a share of upgrades. But most importantly, it might be one of the best sounding synths on the MPC since the Jura. In this video, I want to show you what it is, explore a few presets to get a feel for what it sounds like, and hopefully make some music along the way. Before we start, please know that Akai sent me a serial code so I could try Iona before the launch, but they're not paying me to make this video, nor do they have any say in my opinions here. Now, I highly suggest that you put some headphones on for this next bit. I said it when the Jura came out, and I'll say it again here. I cannot believe that what we're hearing is from an MPC. And I'm really sorry if this is a bit superficial, but I really love that you can actually mod the color of this thing to match the styles of the original physical synth. Just the small touches. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the original, the SH101 was a monophonic analog synth that was highly popular because it sounded great, it was versatile, was not very hard to program, and to top things off, it wasn't extraordinarily expensive either. Air Music Tech, the developers, say that Iona was designed to be an extremely precise modeling of the original hardware, and even though I don't have a real SH101 to compare it with, I am very happy with what I'm hearing. Let's try out a few presets. Now, let's do a brief overview of Iona and try to spot the differences with the original. Just like the SH101, this is a monophonic synth, and I'm going to go from left to right, and we can already spot a big difference from the original on the modulator section, which is the LFO. We now have 9 wave shapes to choose from, as well as a sync button, where the original only offered 4 wave shapes and no sync. So let's try that out. I'm currently modding the VCO with the wave shapes. I also like that the clock is now decoupled from the LFO, so the sequencer doesn't have to follow the LFO rate like it did in the original. Moving on to the right, the rest of the panel sections keep it tightly faithful to the original. You get the same mod slider that lets you assign the amount of modulation or intensity of the effect the LFO has on the VCO, as I just demonstrated. Then you have the same pitch range: 16, 8, 4, and 2 foot. And finally, the same pulse width modulation options, where you can choose the PWM to respond to the LFO, like here, the envelope, or manual. Next to that is a sound source panel, where you can choose one of the 4 sound sources available. You get a square wave, a sawtooth, and a sub-oscillator. And that sub-oscillator can be 1 octave down, 2 octaves down, or 2 octaves down pulse width. Finally, you get noise. And of course, you can mix and match for a very, very nice and thick sound. Moving on, we get the filter section, which in my opinion is where most of the character of any synth really comes to life. Iona features a low-pass resonant filter, and half the fun of using the synth comes from its signature squelchiness, and since you can play around with the cutoff and resonance on the Q links, it's especially cool when you use it to live tweak a running sequence. Just like on the original, the filter can be modulated by the envelope, the LFO, and can also be set to keyboard tracking. And finally, we have the VCA section. Now the VCA itself can either be set to envelope, where it will follow this standard ADSR, or to gate, where it's just an on-off function whether I have the note held down or not. The envelope itself can be set to trigger either with the LFO, gated, or gate and trig, which means the envelope will set off anytime a new note is triggered. Now, the next half of Iona is where most of the tweaks and upgrades become more apparent, namely the new beefed up sequencer and the internal effects. As I mentioned before, the clock speed can now run independently from the LFO, and we also get swing and gate controls. The basic workflow and feel of the original arpeggiator and step sequencer is still here, though you get 128 steps instead of the original's 100. Also, unlike the original, you get a visual representation of the steps for easier editing and fine-tuning. It's basically the same sequencer you know and love. Press rec, the notes will record, and the steps you can choose there. Hold and play. And of course you can set in ties, rests, and legato, as well as reset the entire thing. You also get an arpeggiator here. Now, where they really went the extra mile though is in the integrated effects. Iona comes with its own independent lo-fi, delay, reverb, and 3-band EQ, which really helps make some great patches without even adding MPC's native effects. I'm going to show you the effects with a little sequence going on. First, the lo-fi. My favorite, the delay. The reverb, and finally the EQ. After trying it out for a few days, I think that Iona is a great addition to an already expansive list of MPC plugins. It sounds great and it's really easy to get to grips with, even for a beginner sound designer. My only wish here is that being digital, maybe there could be an option to add more voices and use it polyphonically. That would be a great addition down the line. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, or at least entertaining. Have a great week. I'll see you next time.